We're going to get ready for the holidays and do a little tree trimming. So we're going to paint this tree here, and I also have another example here where we've just done the all white and or gold tree. Grab your supplies and we'll get started. So I've mixed up a whole bunch of green, and I used in my woodland set this deep moss, some cavern, and some bare. So depending on the shade of your green in your palette, you might want to, if you've got the tropical set, to use the palm and tiki, and make sure that you test it out that it's the color that you'd like it. We can also do a couple different versions, and you can add those in layers. In a minute I'll show you, but we want to have enough for the base layer so that we get all of our tree in a similar green color. Now I have these ornaments that are drawn into this Christmas tree. I'm trying to go around them as best as I can so that I leave those white. These are like boughs instead of the needles, and so I'm painting them kind of in groups, meaning there is a batch of kind of a branch from the tree, and I'm painting that. And then I'm getting into some of these. I've got a lot of water in my brush, so I'm going to make sure the fine hairs from my brush kind of get out to the edges of some of these boughs so that there's not a lot of line showing there. So the trickiest part is just to watch for some of the ornaments and not paint over them. If you do, you can just paint those ornaments something that's like a darker color. Obviously they won't be white any longer, like the white of the paper, and you can always kind of dab your paper towel over an area to take some of the pigment away. And I'm going around this ornament, and you don't have to do it exactly. It's not meant for that. I'm giving you these as a guideline. If you go over some of the ornaments, do not worry about it. You'll never even see them in there anyway if you paint over them. And I've got these little circles in here that if you're very, very tediously small, if you can see those little tiny circles, then you can try to go around them as best you can, or just kind of take a swath around them. That's fine, but you're not going to be able to go around all of them, and they're drawn in for texture and interest anyway, so it's okay if those end up green. As you can see, we've got some white of the paper in between some of these boughs or branches. And if you're not sure what you're looking at, once this dries a little bit, you'll be able to see it a little bit better, and you can go back in. So when in doubt, don't paint it green yet. Do it on the second pass. And that's really the key, is to kind of just do this, like I said, kind of in a batch. You can even move around your painting. Do it from up to down so your hand doesn't get in it, and kind of, you can sort of see I've got a lot of water that'll bead up, and then it starts to evaporate and dry, and then you can really see where the pigment got laid down and makes nice little interesting shapes. So moving your brush around is helpful, because it'll start to, instead of puddling all together, it'll have little mini puddles everywhere you kind of worked in an area, and it'll dry that way and have nice little pigment edges. There's a little star right here, so if you can go around that, it's fun to paint in later. And then there's these kind of garland in here. There's a few of them you can see, so you want to try to avoid painting those. It looks like this is also part of a bough, so I'm going to do that now, and I'm just going to call it a branch because it's just hard to say bough every time. B-O-U-G-H. So we can sort of fast forward some of this. There's not much to say. It's the same thing over and over again until you've got it filled in. But you can watch so you can see the form or look at my example to kind of get an idea. I may end up going over some of these little lines and you may find them and be able to avoid that. You could also go over it very, very faintly in green just so that you can find what you want to paint and what you don't want to paint, and then go over it with this darker green on top, kind of scouting out where you'll be painting. So you can really take your time in this. Certainly want to wear your glasses. There's that garland again. Now see how I didn't go to the edge here. I want to pull toward myself and kind of get my brush in the ends of those little areas. Like, see here, I missed those. And you would have never thought when you started this, probably, you'd ever be able to see those ornaments emerge, but there they are. Kind of move around. Make sure I get this color in both sides all the way down to the bottom. I don't know if that was a garland or a branch, so I think it just became a branch. Okay, we've got the basic shape of our tree, so now we're just going to go in and put those little details on this bottom part like I did earlier. And I'm going to start putting some of that darker green into my tree where I've already painted. Give it more dimension. Especially here at the bottom. I was running out, but then the bottom would be darker anyway, so I definitely want to have some dark pigment. When you're painting anything. And even after you put the ornaments in, you can always go back and re-look at it again. And actually, we could go ahead and put the trunk of our tree in here. Leave a little bit of the white of the paper, and we can decide how to do our tree skirt. We've got our star here, if you want to do that yellow, and then we'll work on the ornaments after that dries. So our Christmas tree is good and dry, and you can always add more details later if you want, but we want to go ahead and start putting the ornaments on our tree. I showed you an example using a gold, and so this one I'm going to use red, and I'll go and start putting those in. The pigment to be strong, so I'm going to use that right out of there on Foxberry. And you're welcome to do whatever you want. And if you've got like a metallic, you can always add that on top afterward. So you can see I'm leaving a little bit of the white of the paper as I'm going around. These ornaments are not going to be in a perfect circle. And that one's filled in, giving a little variety. And you can go right over the green as I just did there if you've got some green that went over the line. See any places that you missed on your tree, like I have that one there, then you can just wait until these are dry and go over that. So I'm just making sure that this is good and balanced. Half the ornament, and then we made it kind of ombre by, could probably just do one half here. And then what we did was we just cleared our brush and just touched a little water here to ignite that paint, just to make it look a little faded like that. So you're welcome to try that. You can, once it kind of dries a little bit, like this one's kind of dry, you can take a clear brush over top so that it's not bright white. But some of them will be a little bit bright white but that is really pretty, so you could definitely do that for at least the bigger ones on this tree. So I'll show you again. If I get the bottom half, the strong pigment line here. And we'll wait for that to just set up a little bit. It's not going to necessarily be dry, but a little bit tacky. And you can alternate. You can have all kinds of different colors in here if you want. I did the other one all gold, and this one I'm doing all red. And then I'm going to kind of go back over any of, so once they dry, they kind of lose the pop. So I'll put another layer in here. So I'm going to clear off my brush and now kind of loosen that pigment up at the top there. And probably just add a little bit more red. And I think maybe I'll make this garland gold, trying to stay in the lines because it will start to darken that green wherever it touches. And don't get your red in that or it'll look funny. Like maybe there's a few berries, you could always make those in another color or gold. Got that star here. Thought there were two, so I may miss it. And the tops of these will be gold. And you want to make sure the red is dry so those don't combine together. I'll come over the star again. And you can decide whether you want to some kind of flooring in here. You could draw some gifts in around here, even over this before you paint it, if you wanted to draw some gifts and kind of somehow creatively incorporate those before you do the skirt. So there you have this gorgeous Christmas tree.